Good morning, ladies. Today our learning target is I can identify character motivation by evaluating the character's words and actions. So today our story is The Boy with Buttery Hands. It was on a rainy afternoon in mid-July when Johnny learned not to cover his hands in butter. He was stuck in a summer funk, too bored to try to find any way to relieve his boredom, too sleepy to get off the couch. He finally found the energy to haul himself to his feet and clomp down the hallway to the kitchen. He wasn't hungry, but he figured he might as well look at some food. The hallway that ran down the middle of their house was long, with a wooden floor that was perfect for toy cars or sliding in sock-footed feet. But on a rainy summer day, Johnny didn't even have it in him to slide down the hall. There was nothing he wanted to eat in the pantry and nothing in the fridge. He was about to give up and return to the sofa when he spied the butter, sitting out in a butter dish beside the bread box. Softened by the summer humidity, it glistened under the stove light. Now that, Johnny thought, is something a boy could have fun with. He flopped onto the floor, peeled off his socks, and began applying the butter. He slathered it onto his feet with his hands, rubbing it in like a card collector polishing a prized classic. Once his feet were thoroughly slippery, he stood up and walked slowly to the hallway, taking care to put his feet straight, lest he slipped and fall on his face. He started down the long hallway, spit on his hands, rubbed them together, and grabbed hold of the door frame. He leaned back and then yanked himself forward, hoping to launch himself down the hall like an Olympic ski jumper. Instead, he fell on his face. "Ow!" he said, and he tried to stand up. He failed, slipping and falling again. By bracing himself in the middle of the door jamb, he was able to push himself into his feet. Push himself to his feet. Walking carefully again, he returned to the kitchen, bruised, thirsty, and covered in butter. There was something slightly odd about the way that Johnny drank water. Ever since he was little, he preferred not to drink out of glasses. Instead, he drank cold things out of mugs because it made it hard for his mom to notice that he was drinking soda when he wasn't allowed. Like everything else Johnny did, it drove his sister May crazy. "Why are you drinking juice out of that mug?" she would say. "It's going to get all sticky. Use a glass like a normal person." She got particularly upset when she caught him drinking out of her favorite mug, a purple one, covered in glitter, which said "Best Friends Forever." May's best friend at camp had made it for her the previous summer, and she used it on only special occasions. Johnny thought this was stupid since he didn't know any of the camp friends who stayed close for a whole year, much less forever. Still, he respected May's attachment to the mug and used it only when he wanted to make her angry. But today, Johnny wasn't thinking. If he had been, he probably wouldn't be covered in butter. He slipped and slid his way to the kitchen. Desperate for some water, he reached for the first mug he saw. It slipped through his fingers and shattered on the floor. Maybe May and her camp buddy would be best friends forever, but the mug was finished. "Oh no," said Johnny. For nearly a full minute he stared at the mug, as if he could put it back together with his eyes. It didn't work. He flopped his way around the kitchen to the utility drawer and rummaged through until he found the superglue. Like every tube of superglue in every drawer in the country, it had dried out, gotten crusty, and glued itself to the cabinet. "Oh no," he said. He just kept rummaging and finally found a jar of rubber cement. He scanned the fine print on the back of the label until he found the words "non-toxic." It would have to do. Johnny let himself fall to the ground and scooched his way over to the shattered mug. Starting with the base, he searched for shards that would match the jagged angles around the handle. When he found one, he unscrewed the rubber cement, which was no easy task with his hands covered in butter. It was just like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. Johnny hated jigsaw puzzles. He worked piece by piece, getting rubber cement all over his face, hair, and hands until he had finally assembled something that looked vaguely like a mug. Clutching it in both hands, he raised it back to the shelf and then slowly walked as slowly as possible back to the living room and sofa. He had liked it better when he was bored. Okay, so before we get into our close read, we're going to preview our questions. Excellent strategy before we do our close read so you can focus it with your marks. Number 1, what does Johnny put on his hands and feet? Number 2, what motivates Johnny's decision to put butter on his feet? Okay, so there's one of our character motivation questions. Make sure you're using ECI. Number 3, Johnny thinks that putting butter on his feet will let him slide quickly down the hallway. What evidence from the passage best supports this conclusion? So a conclusion, again, similar to a claim, a result to be founded. Number 4, how did Johnny most likely feel about putting butter on his feet by the end of the story? What is the story mostly about? There's a main idea question. Number 6, read the following sentences. He flopped onto the floor, peeled off his socks, and began applying the butter. He slathered it onto his feet with his hands, rubbing it in like a car collector polishing a prized classic. Once his feet were thoroughly slippery, he stood up and walked slowly down the hallway. As used in the sentence, what does the word slathered mean? For number 7, you're going to choose the answer that best completes that sentence below. So Johnny is bored on a rainy day, blank, he covers his feet in butter. Number 8, what is slightly odd about the way Johnny drinks water? So slightly odd is like kind of weird. Number 9, explain why the way Johnny drinks the water is important to the plot in the story. So again, keep in mind, plot in the story is the events of the story, the way the story is kind of organized at beginning, middle, and end. So think about why the way that Johnny drinks water is important to the plot. And then number 10, the passage ends with the following sentence. He had liked it better when he was bored. Explain why Johnny feels this way by using evidence from the passage. All right, ladies, so now it's time to close read. You're going to chunk your text, circle and attempt to define unknown words. Make sure you're underlining key information, and remember to focus on information that would help to support your answers because you've already previewed your questions. You're going to summarize in the margin and identify any elements that may be helpful. So again, you're focusing on character motivation. These are the words and actions of the characters. Okay, and then you're thinking about that motivation, the reason why they are saying or doing those things. So now it's time to pause the video. You're going to do your close read and answer your questions, and then it's time to check your work against mine. All right, ladies, so now it is time to take a look at your marks versus mine, trying to see, similarities, differences, and it's time to evaluate your details to make sure they are relevant and support your responses that you are writing. So what I want to just kind of share with you too is, so for my second read, I had a big question. Why hands and not feet? So the name of our title is The Boy with Buttery Hands, but Johnny puts butter on his feet. So I want you all to really think about that, and we're definitely going to discuss that during Zoom about why the author chose to do that when he actually put butter on his feet. Okay, so now I want to take a look and go through my notes that I have here. So it's an interesting kind of way, it's author's craft, the way that it was started here. So it was a rainy afternoon in mid-July when Johnny learned not to cover his hands in butter. So we kind of show here that there's a preview to event and something did not go well. He was stuck in a summer funk, so it's part of his motivation. And he brought himself to the kitchen because he was bored and he was like, might as well eat. So he's very bored and has run out of activities. So down here, we start to get into him seeing the butter. And for some reason, the way that it glistened, he was like, that's something I could definitely have fun with. So then we kind of go through, we start our chunk here, kind of ends on the next page. So I'm going to have it shown this way. So then he starts to put it all over. So we have a little simile here. Put it all over his feet. And yeah, shows that he's ready. So he leaned up and yanked himself forward, hoping to launch himself down the hall like an Olympic ski jumper. So his goal for putting the butter on his feet was that he would slide down the hallway. I know, very silly, not super safe. And he fails, right? He falls. It says he falls right on his face. So hoping to skate down the hallway, Johnny lathers his feet in butter. So bracing himself, securing himself between the doors. Then he decides that, you know what, I need to go to the kitchen. I need some water. He's bruised, thirsty, and covered in butter. And that's why I have kind of here this defeated. So then we get into the information about how he drinks water, which is a big clue about the lesson that he learns, right? So instead, if he drank cold things out of mugs because it was hard for his mom to notice he was drinking soda when he wasn't allowed, okay? And then we are introduced to his sister, and we learn that she doesn't like him drinking out of the special mug. So defeated, Johnny goes to the kitchen and accidentally breaks his sister's favorite mug. And what I thought was interesting over here is that what the author did here was got particulars that when she caught him drinking out of the favorite mug, which said best friends forever, we learned that reason why. But then down here it says he respected May's attachment to the mug and only used it when he wanted to make her angry. So originally his motivation was to make her angry, but in this case, it was a total accident. He never tried to do it to make her angry. So it shatters on the floor, and then he's running all over the place looking for super glue, and then he finds rubber cement, which is very similar to super glue. And he tries to glue it back together first, and then he sees that it's dried out, but then he finds the rubber cement and puts it all back together. And then it's funny at the end and when it says he liked it better when he was bored. So what I want to do here is I want to show you some notes that I took talking about Johnny's motivation. So this is the reason behind his behavior or his action. So I have the actions on the left-hand side and the reasons on the right-hand side. So I just want to go through and kind of share with you what I was thinking before I get into our short response questions that I want to go over. So the action was he put butter on his feet. What was the reason he did that? What was his motivation for doing that? Is that he was bored in the summer, so he wanted to skate down the hallway. I think he actually wanted to say the word ski. And the butter caught his eye, right? It was glistening, right? So he goes to the kitchen for a drink of water. So when he did that, the reason he did that was because he falls by failing at his skiing down the hallway with his buttery feet. So he felt defeated. I'm thirsty. I'm going to go. He breaks the mug. What's the reason he breaks the mug? He wasn't thinking. He didn't really have a motive to do this. But his hands were slippery because there was butter on it, and he was so desperate for water that he really wasn't thinking, really wasn't using his noggin. He fixes the mug. What's his reason for fixing the mug? He broke it. And he doesn't want to upset his sister. It's her favorite mug. Normally, the motivation was that he would only use it to make her mad. So him breaking it is something that, he really didn't mean to do, so his motivation was different. I thought it was very interesting how the author did that. So now I want to jump down to 8, 9, and 10. What was slightly odd about the way Johnny drinks water? So again, you're comparing your notes to mine. You're taking a look at your details and the way that you set up your inferences. So the way Johnny drinks water is slightly odd because he drinks cold things out of mugs. Mugs are meant for hot beverages. Drinking glasses are for cold beverages such as juice, soda, milk, and water, which in this case is what he was drinking it for. So number 9, explain why the way Johnny drinks water is important to the plot of the story. And this question, number 9, also kind of reflects and connects to the question that I asked at the beginning about why hands and not feet. So why did the author choose to say the boy with buttery hands instead of the boy with buttery feet? And I think that our answer to this question really helps out with that. So I said the way Johnny drinks water is important to the plot because he drinks water from mugs and grabbed his sister's favorite one. Johnny breaks the mug and puts it back together. Afterwards, he learns his lesson about not putting butter on your feet. So even though he did put butter on his feet and he learned that lesson, if he didn't have it on his hands, he wouldn't have broke his sister's mug, learned that lesson, and we really would have no story. So I think that's why the author chose to do that, but I'd love to hear what you have to say as well. And then so for number 10, he had liked it better when he was bored. So what I had said was that Johnny feels like he had liked it better when he was bored because he didn't have to put things back together or get hurt. Johnny fails at his attempt to ski down the hallway and actually injures himself. Also, Johnny has to repair his sister's mug because he broke it, which was a result of the activity he chose to not be bored anymore. All right, ladies, so thank you for your time today, and I can't wait to hear your responses.